Okay, everyone, so here's a question for you. Is social media the reason narcissism has become the problem that it is in the world? What do you think? Please drop your answer in the comments. I wish you were all sitting right here so I could hear them from you, but I'll take what I can get. And please give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful. It helps get this channel promoted so more people can find it and more people know what to do about managing the narcissistic people in their lives. This series is about social media and narcissism, and obviously this video really takes that issue on headlong. We know that social media in many ways is sort of an accelerant for issues in narcissistic relationships, and this series is sort of designed to help you navigate the waters of social media if you are in a narcissistic relationship. Now, I was actually at a gathering recently and was talking with a few people. And I remember one of the conversations was with someone I'm very close to and respect. And she said, I'm quoting, "I think social media is the worst thing that has ever happened in our lifetimes." I was like, wow, that's a powerful line. And she said she felt the harm that it has caused to people, how they view the world, how they view their lives, their self-esteem and mental health. She feels that those negative impacts are unsurpassed by any other social influence before that. It was a big statement, but I got to tell you, it's a little more than a little bit true. And though I think it may be in a dead heat with some other cultural, political, and social influences in the world that have been around a lot longer than social media, those tend to be like philosophies, like economic systems or governmental systems, those kinds of things. Social media, though, is different. It's not a system, it's a tool, right? And it's a tool that has evolved only recently, and yet it has shaped us as a species in our lifetime. I always have to give myself a reality check. To give you sort of a trajectory, when I started as a university professor in 1999, it didn't exist. When I retired as a professor in 2021, it changed the entire social and educational landscape forever. I didn't grow up with it in the 1970s, thank heaven. It didn't exist when I had small children, thank heaven. It didn't exist when I started my academic career. It didn't exist when I was a student. So for me, social media doesn't really represent a normalized way to interact. It's like a language I didn't grow up speaking. So it just doesn't seem like a way I would communicate to people. And yes, you might be good at any online communicating. No, I suck at texting. I am good at emails, though, but that's because I'm a letter writer from way back, so it's like I'm typing a letter. So I'd love to know, drop a comment. At what stage of your lives did social media become a major part of your life? It'll be interesting to see the different kinds of responses. Now this, however, begs the bigger question. Is social media responsible for what seems like a more narcissistic world? Now, let's face it, this is my YouTube channel, and the irony is not lost on me that this is a form of social media. But I'm going to take my bully pulpit for a minute and consider what I'm about to say, my opinion, and my opinion alone. The question is social media responsible for the uptick in overall narcissistic behavior in the world? My answer is yes. Listen, I always try to be a moderate and play the centrist party line. Social media, yeah, I know, it can create communities. It allows people who may have traditionally felt isolated to connect over common ground. It lets families stay in touch. It allows disparate people to share points of view. It allows people to share baby pictures and wedding pictures. Those things are true. And for people who only use it that way, good for you. I guess that's nice. But those assets, those gifts of social media, when we measure them against the harm, I'm sorry, to me the balance is still off. Social media is probably still more bad than good. I'm not even going to get into the harms of misinformation and all that stuff and the mental health kinds of impacts, especially on younger people. I'm going to stay strictly in the narcissism lane here. I do believe there is a decent chunk of people, I do, who use social media in a healthy manner to do the things I was talking about. Build community, stay in touch, cheer each other on, share updates with widely scattered social networks. People who have health issues may share support and feedback, share recipes, play silly games with each other. All of that feels harmless to me. I also believe there's a pretty damn decent chunk of people who use social media in a manner that can be called perpetrating. They use it to stalk people, to bully people, to share harmful information. The research on cyberbullying clearly shows the impact of attacking people using social media or other online or text spaces has the same and potentially worse impact as in-person bullying. Trolling, stalking, online bullying, all of this behavior is very much something that's often perpetrated by narcissistic individuals. So here's another place for a comment. Do you feel like the toxic people on social media that you've run into have had a negative impact on your well-being? Sadly, there are people whose mental health is negatively impacted by social media. They may be the recipients of the bullying and harassment and develop symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress. There are those who look at it and socially compare themselves to others, and this intersects with other mental health or self-esteem issues and can result in these people feeling significantly less than other people, depressed, anxious, hopeless, worthless, unattractive, and can culminate in a frank psychological crisis, especially in younger people. In the most serious cases, exposures to these kinds of things can culminate in self-harm or suicidal behavior. And I definitely believe that social media is a tool that is designed to foster and proliferate narcissism. It is designed for people to solicit validation, to post a false narrative about themselves and about their own lives, to manipulate other people, to insult and demean other people, to share a life that is actually about some sort of created aspirational self rather than their true authentic selves. So it gives the narcissistic person a public playground to do the things that they do best. And that in and of itself is not the issue. That by itself would not result in a proliferation of narcissistic behavior throughout society. The issue is that all of that preening or posturing and posting and sharing and selfieing and look at how much better my life is than yoursing is rewarded. In the last 10 years or so, we have devolved into the commodified world of the consumerist influencer. People who spend their days sharing about what they ate for breakfast, their children, their vacations, their pranks, complete with hashtags in a chronic hunt for sponsors, free stuff, and followers. It's a strategy and it's a game. And people's jobs are designed to get these people followers. This isn't an even playing field. It's also a business. And here's the thing. I don't look at an advertisement on television or in a magazine thinking that that's real life or that I could be like those people. I know it's an advertisement. But in the new validation-seeking influencer culture, people are behaving as though the people in those pictures who they may identify as their friends those are their real lives when they're advertisements. And that confuses people who look at these posts, especially those who may be more impressionable, maybe younger, or more vulnerable to those forms of manipulation. Once the people who are using social media for narcissistic supply were getting amply rewarded for it, with money, with notoriety, with stuff, and then the subsequent power, now that was really when social media became the accelerant for societal narcissism. And it resulted in a social media world of narcissistic people and the people who fall for the narcissistic false narratives and who unwittingly became the enablers. And there's a whole group of vulnerable folks out there, especially adolescents and children, people who are vulnerable in other ways. For example, they may be very suggestible. They may struggle with mental health issues. They may struggle with self-esteem issues. These are all people who don't know how all of this racket works and are more easy to fleece or play. And they're all being narcissistically abused on a larger scale. These same vulnerable folks are using social media as a place to make their own calls for help or issues they're experiencing, which can often mean that these users are yelling into the wrong abyss, and it pulls them off the path of getting the appropriate help that they really need. We are about to hit the first generation of emerging adults, people going from adolescence into adults, who were born into a world in which social media existed from the day they were born. So their parents used it when they were infants. Their childhoods were exhaustively documented on social media. It existed for their entire lives. Now, the jury is out on how this will manifest with regard to not only narcissism, but also mental health and identity development in general. The data that will emerge in the next few years is going to be fascinating. Now, the portrayal of the false self is the narcissist ground game. They do it better than any of us. As a therapist, it is often painful to watch the hurt that people experience because they look at social media and they see that they weren't included in a social get-together because they see the pictures posted during and after the event, or the insecurity that emanates from new mothers, that emanates from seeing the perfection of a peer's children, or the success of a peer's career, or even how well the damn baby's sleeping during the night. The isolation that is felt in the wake of observing families have big holiday get-togethers and matching outfits when people may not have that kind of connection to their families. The yearning that comes from watching anniversary stories and love stories and wedding stories while a person is navigating their own divorce. Now, we're all becoming a little savvier at how we consume and look at social media. Many of us know what's true. We know what's manufactured. But in our weakest moments, even when it is another person's embellished narrative, we're vulnerable to believing it, and it hurts. Ostracism, that sense of being left out, is a universal fear and a universal wound for all of us. Long before social media, narcissistic individuals had been really good at constructing their false selves, the self that they believe the world wants to see, to set goals that are considered admirable by other people, to sell themselves as doing better than they actually are, and certainly better than everyone else is. Now, with social media, they have a theater to perform these false selves in. Once upon a time, narcissistic folks were stuck with just getting validation from the small band of people they knew. Now, it's a different game. They can get validation from the world, which emboldens them even more. And the enablers believe the false narrative, which gives the narcissistic folks even more power. So, yeah, you better believe it. But even alongside that friend of mine, I do believe that social media is a catalyst for what has become a proliferation of narcissism and enabling in our society. In a way, the only path forward is to see social media as the fictional bulletin board that it is, a sort of theater of the absurd, a time capsule of what matters to people, but not what is really happening. But it could also be a place to perhaps stop rewarding the narcissistic people by starting simple. Simple things like just stop liking their stuff. Stop feeling the need to praise it, as a place to learn how to set boundaries. But since that isn't going to happen anytime soon, even outside of social media, everyone needs to be more careful. Nowadays, you are more likely to meet narcissistic people in general, in the workplace, at school, on dating apps, on dating anything, in social settings, at family reunions, on the city bus, on an airplane, on a tour bus, in a casino, anywhere. Social media ain't going anywhere. And let's face it, the narcissistic folks rule the space. So again, I'm Dr. Ramani, and I would love to hear from you. How have you changed your social media habits to cut narcissistic people out of your life? So we have to learn to be more tactical in how we navigate the world. Learn the red flags, practice setting boundaries, watch those cognitively dissonant patterns like justification that we so often fall back into. Stop gaslighting yourself. And the best antidote for your life, obviously, is to not let these folks into your life in the first place. Just like you close the door against the flies, because it's a real pain in the neck to have to run around and have to keep swatting at the flies, do the same thing in your life with difficult people. Social media may have made the proliferation of narcissism worse, but you can at least safeguard your life, your soul, your space, and your mental health against the harm that these personality styles bring into our lives. So I hope that gives you something else to chew on around social media and narcissism. Thanks again.